Hello and welcome to another tutorial on using Xamarin and C# to develop mobile apps. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make your first Android app using Xamarin and the C# language. And this app will basically be a temperature converter. So it can convert between Celsius and Fahrenheit. The user can enter in a temperature and then press a button to pick what kind of conversion they want to run, and then they can see the result. So to get started, you need to open up Xamarin Studio. You might be using Visual Studio as well, which will be similar to this, but I'm going to show how to make this project using Xamarin Studio Community on a Mac. Okay, it's pretty much the same process on Windows. So firstly, what I need to do is click on New Solution. And then when you click on New Solution, you can choose a template for your project. And you can choose cross-platform, you can choose iOS, you can choose Android. You might have the options for Mac or .NET. But what I'm going to do, we're making an Android app, so I need to select Android app. And then here, under General, I select Android app and make sure that C# is the language selected. Then I click on Next. Okay, I'm going to give this app a name. I'm just going to call it Temperature Converter. And I've just got it as one word, capital T, capital C there, one word. And then I need to pick a target platform. So I can pick maximum compatibility, I can choose modern development, or I can choose latest and greatest. I'm going to choose modern development for this project. And notice that it says minimum Android version 4.1 Jelly Bean API 16. So we need to keep a note of that because later on we need to use an emulator or the Xamarin Android player, and we need to have a virtual device that we can use to run the app or emulate the app, and it needs to be compatible with our app. So I'm going to choose modern development, and I'll make sure that I have a virtual device that can run an app with this API level or higher. Okay, so I'm going to leave theme as default and press next. I'm going to leave the project name the same, so that's also temperature converter, and the solution name as well. You need to pick a folder to store your project in, so I'm just storing it in my projects folder that I already have created. Make sure that box is ticked, and you don't need to worry about ticking any other boxes there. Just click on create. Okay, and now it's creating the project. And the first thing that you'll notice is when Xamarin creates your project, it will most likely automatically open this file, which is mainactivity.cs. So in your solution panel here, it shows your solution, your project, and different folders that you'll need, like references, packages, properties. They contain different components that actually make the app run. Okay. Usually mainactivity.cs, which is right here, will be the first file that opens. If you don't see it open, then just double click on mainactivity.cs to open it. And CS stands for C#. Now by default, there'll already be some lines of code in there for an example app. But we want to get rid of what's there, so I'm going to delete this line here where it says int count equals 1. Okay, and I'm also going to delete the code for a button. So there's a button in there. I'm going to delete these lines of code, okay, including that curly bracket and semicolon there. Okay, so I can get rid of that. And then I can press Command S to save, or Control S if you're using Windows. Okay, so after you've deleted those lines, on the left side of the screen here under the solutions list, click on the resources folder and then open the layout folder. Okay, and inside the layout folder there is a file called main.axml. Double click on that. It might take a minute to open and set up, but it will contain the storyboard. Here it is. It will contain the storyboard that shows the actual screen, the main screen for our Android app. So the default button, I've deleted it from the code, but now I also need to delete that button here from the actual storyboard. So I can click on that button and then I can right click and click delete. And that will get rid of that default button there that I don't need. Okay? Alright, now what I need to do is I need to add some items to this screen, some design elements. So we need some text labels to present text information to the user. We need a text field where the user can enter in a temperature value to convert. And we also need a couple of buttons, one to convert to Celsius and one to convert to Fahrenheit. Okay, so on your toolbox here on the right hand side, you have a whole heap of design elements that you can use, like buttons, checkboxes, radio buttons, text elements, and scrolling down, you've got different image elements as well. So there's a whole heap of different elements that you can use. And you can also search for them there in that search box. So we need to add a text label to the top here, which is going to tell the user to enter in a temperature value to convert. So I'm going to look for text small, which is this one, and then drag that on. Okay, so now I have a small text label at the top of my screen, and when you drag things onto an Android screen, they'll kind of stack. So you can rearrange them as you like, but they'll stack on top of each other. So I have a small small text label element on the screen now. Now I need to drag a plain text element on. So I'll scroll down to where it says text fields, and here there should be a plain text item, which is that's a text field. Okay, so I'll drag that underneath. Alright, now the difference between these is that small text, that is a text label. It will display text information to the user. The plain text element here is a text field, so that will allow the user to type text in, or type items in using the keyboard on their phone. Okay, so now I've got two items there I've dragged on from the toolbox. Okay, now I need to drag two buttons on, so I'll look for buttons, which is up the top under form widgets. So I'll drag one button here at the bottom, and then another one underneath that. Okay, there we go. So I've got two buttons. The last screen design element that I need to add is a large text label. So I'll scroll back down again, I'll grab text large, and then I'll drag that there to the bottom. And that's going to display the result from the conversion. Okay, so what I can do next is basically rename all of these items. I need to rename them, and I also need to change the actual text that displays on them. So we'll change the text first. So I'll click on small text element, and then here where it says properties, make sure you're on the widget tab. Okay, and then go down to where it says text and change the text that's displayed on that text label. So we want to change it from small text to something like enter temperature in degrees, something like that. Okay, so this is where the user, it's telling the user they need to enter in the temperature in degrees. Okay, now we could add more elements here. We could have maybe an app logo or something at the top and some more instructions, but we're keeping it pretty simple for now. Alright, I'll just hit the enter or return key, or click out of that box, and you can see now it says that it says here temperature in degrees. Okay, so it's giving the user a bit more information. Alright, now I need to change the text properties as well for both of the buttons. Okay, so the first one, I'll click on that and then change text. Instead of saying button, it will say convert to Celsius, making sure I spell that right. And then the next button, I'll change its text as well to say convert to Fahrenheit. Okay, so now both of those buttons have got the right text on them as well. Okay, now the large text label, that's going to display the result, and at the moment it says large text. You could either leave it empty, so you could just have it empty like that, and it won't display anything until the user has entered in a value and clicked on a button to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. It wouldn't display anything in there until a result is available. But just so that we can see that there is an actual label there, I'm going to have a default value there. I'll just make it 0. Okay, so that means when the user opens the app, it will say 0 at the start, and then it will show the result when they press one of those buttons, the relevant result. Okay, so that 0 will be the default value. Now, at the moment I'm in the designer view. I can actually change all of these things from the source view as well. So I can click on the source tab, and I can actually see the text for those different elements here. So we've got temperature in degrees is a text view element. We've got an edit text element. We've got a couple of buttons, one that says convert to Celsius and one that says convert to Fahrenheit. And then another text view item which displays a 0 at the moment, but it will display the result. So you can actually change all of the things in there as well, or you can just do it in designer view, whichever way you prefer. Okay, I'm going to save this, so I'll press Command S to save, Control S if you're on Windows. So just saving our progress here. Alright, now that we've changed the text that displays on the labels and the buttons, we need to actually change their names or the IDs of these elements so that they can be used in the code that we're about to add. So what I'll do is I'll click on the temperature field here, which is where the user, this box, text box here, or text field, where the user is going to type in a temperature value. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go to where it says ID, and I'm going to keep the @+ID / bit, so I'm going to keep all of that, but I'm going to change its ID from edit text 1 to temperature text edit, and I've got a lowercase t for temperature, uppercase T for text, and E is also uppercase there on edit, so using camel case. Okay, so I've changed its ID. Alright, now I want to change the ID of the text label as well that's going to display the conversion result. So I'll go down to that text label there and change it from where it says text view 2, it's going to say result text view, just like that. Okay, and basically I need to repeat those steps and do that for the buttons as well. So I'll click on the convert to Celsius button, and I'm going to change where it says button 1, I'm going to call that C button. C stands for Celsius. And then same here for the Fahrenheit button, I'm going to change that to F button with capital B for button, where F stands for Fahrenheit. Okay, nice, so we can save that again, just making sure that you save your progress regularly in case the program crashes or something goes wrong. Okay, now what we need to do is add the actual functionality to the app. We're going to do some coding now. So we can open that main activity.cs file again, or it's down here, but it's actually already open, so we can click on that tab to go back to the code. And firstly what we need to do is define the different text labels and button elements in this code. So all of the text elements, all of the button elements that we've created in here, we need to go and define them in the code. So inside the area where it says public class main activity, and then there's a curly bracket there, we can hit enter or return to go inside that main activity class there, and we can start adding some code to define those different elements. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start with a button, so capital B for button, and you can see it automatically gives suggestions on what we might want to type in, so I can either finish typing button or I can hit return to complete that. And I'm going to define the C button there. I'm going to do the same for the F button. Oops, button, F button. Okay, and what else do we have? We had text view. We had one of those elements called result text view, and the last one is edit text element. which is called temperature text edit. Okay, so we need to make sure that these words here are spelt exactly as is and with capital letters where you see them. So those are the different elements that we're going to use, and these are the names of the IDs of those elements that we created. All right, so type of element and then the element ID. All right, now we've got two buttons. We could actually define them on one line by just saying button, C button, comma, F button, and then a semicolon, but I've just done that on two lines like that. It really doesn't matter. But if we want to reduce the amount of code, we could define two or more buttons all on one line. Okay, so now we need to assign the values from this file here. We've got the main.axml file. We need to assign the values to each element in the C# file. All right, so where you see inside this method here, you see set content view resource layout main. We're going to add some code under there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type C button. So I'll start with the button. So C button equals find by view ID, capital F, capital V, capital B, and capital I there. Find by view ID, and then an angle bracket. Button. It's the type of element. It's a button. Close that angle bracket, and then in normal brackets need the name of the app, which is temperature converter dot resource dot ID dot C button, and then close that bracket and semicolon. And I need to do this for each of those elements. So now I'll do that for F button. Okay, so the two buttons are done. Now the result text view, which is a text view element. Close those brackets, and then lastly, temperature edit text, which is an edit text element. Yep. Okay, there we go. So we've assigned values from the main.axml file to each element here in the main activity.cs C# code file. Okay, so now we'll be able to use these elements in a new method that will convert the temperature input. In fact, we'll have two methods. We'll have one that will convert the value to Celsius, and one that will convert the value to Fahrenheit. Okay, so next thing we need to do is create click events for both the convert to Celsius button and the convert to Fahrenheit button. So we need click events so that when those events are fired, when the user presses one of those buttons, they will run code inside a method that will either convert to Celsius or convert to Fahrenheit and then display the result. Okay, so to do this, we'll just move down a little bit to a new line of code, and we'll start with the Celsius button or C button. So we'll type C button dot click. So we'll have a click event plus equals and then a space, and you can see that there's already a few options here. So if I click on C button underscore click, double click on that, you can see it finishes off that line, but it also automatically creates a new method called C button underscore click. Okay, so in a moment we'll add the code to convert to Celsius or convert temperature to Celsius inside that method there. But what we can do here is add another line. Whoops, click at the end of that line there and add another line for the F button as well. So F button dot click plus equals, and then we'll choose F button underscore click. Alright, so now we have two methods. We have F button click and C button click. So all of the code converting a value to Fahrenheit will go here, and all of the code converting a value to Celsius will go here inside those curly brackets. Alright, let's start with adding the code for the F button click method to convert a value to Fahrenheit. Let's do that first. So we want to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So we need to know the formula in order to do that. And we need to firstly create a new float variable that will contain the value entered by the user in the temperature edit text field. So when they type a value into the text field, we need to store that in a variable, and that variable is going to be the float data type because the temperature could be, for example, 20.5 degrees. Okay. And that value will also need to be converted or passed from the string data type to the float data type. Because when the user types something into a text field, it will be stored as a string, and we need to convert it from string to float so we can run a calculation on it. So inside the F button click method, we'll click inside, we'll go inside those two curly brackets there, we'll create a float variable called temp for temperature. And that will be equal to float.pass, and then in brackets, temperature text edit dot text, and then close that bracket and semicolon. So we're going to grab the data from the temperature text edit text field. We're going to grab its text, and then we're going to pass it or convert it to a float data type. Okay. So now what we'll need to do is also create another float variable. Alright, so we can make another line there. So we need another float variable that will store the result of converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Alright, so we can say float, and I'll make a new variable called F result, which is equal to temperature multiplied. So we need to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we need to multiply the Celsius value by 1.8 and then add 32. Okay, but we're working here with a float, and we've got other numbers here. We need to say that these numbers here will also be float. So at the end of each number there we add an F. And F stands for float. Okay, so we've got float, F result equals temperature text edit multiplied by 1.8 F for float plus 32 F for float there as well. Okay, now we can access the result text view element. So the element that's going to display the actual result to the user, and we can display the conversion result on that text label at the bottom of the screen in the app, so underneath both of those buttons. So basically the result will also need to be now converted to a string. So we've got float, we need to convert it to a string. So we'll add another line there, and we'll grab the result text view element. We'll say result text view dot text, so the text that's going to be on that label. We're going to say that is equal to F result dot toString, so we're converting it to a string, and then open bracket, close bracket. Now we could just leave it at that. We could have a semicolon there at the end of that line, and it would just display the number. But what we might do is we'll add a plus, and then we'll add a string that says, we've got a space, and then it will say degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, what it will do is display the result, and then the words degrees Fahrenheit at the end there. Okay, so now we're done with the this Fahrenheit button. Now what we need to do is the same thing for the Celsius button. So we can copy this line here, where we make the temperature variable, and we can paste it in there. So we can have float temp equals float dot pass temperature text edit dot text. But now we need to create a variable called C result, which is equal to temperature text edit. Actually, sorry, it's equal to temp. So we just created that variable, so we don't need to define that again. So we've got the temp variable here, which contains the temperature, and we're going to say float C result equals, and then in brackets, temp minus 32. It's a float, but we want to work with floats here. So we'll say F. All right, that in brackets, and then divide that by 1.8, and then F for float again, and then a semicolon. Okay, so this is the formula for converting to Celsius. So we take the Fahrenheit value, and then we say minus 32, and then divide all of that by 1.8. Okay. Now we say result text view dot text equals C result dot to string plus, and then the string degrees Celsius. Okay, so same thing that we did before, but instead of displaying the Fahrenheit result, we're displaying the Celsius result because the user has clicked on the Celsius button when this method runs. All right, that's almost it. So we can save that. All right, and we can click on File and Save, or we can just press Command S or Control S on Windows. Now we need to go to the main.axml file again in the designer view. We need to click on the temperature edit text text field element, and in the properties panel here, we need to scroll down until we see input type. Okay, and we need to click on that and then change the input to number decimal. So that will basically provide the decimal keyboard. All right, because we want the user to be able to type in temperatures that might be something like 20.5 degrees. So they need to be able to press the point or period button. So we need a decimal keypad to display. So that's why we say input type number decimal there. Okay, and that's all of the coding done. All right, so now we can actually test the app and see if it works. Just make sure that everything's saved. All right, everything's saved. So now we can go and run this app and see how it works. Now, what you'll need to do for the very first time is you need to click here and make sure that you've got a virtual device that will be compatible with this app to emulate or test the app. All right, now I've got one here. It's the Nexus 5 running KitKat. It's API level 19. Now, remember when I started the project, I chose the target platform, and the target platform was, I think it was API level 16. So it will be able to run on this virtual device. It's okay because this is API level 19, so it will be able to run apps older than API level 19. It won't be able to run anything above API level 19 though. So if I was creating an app that was targeted at apps with API level 20, for example, I would need to download a new virtual device. So if you don't have a virtual device there, and you can see here that it says incompatible API level, there's another emulator or another virtual device here, which is an API level 15, and it's not compatible because this app is targeted at a minimum level of API 16. All right, so I've got one compatible virtual device there. I've got an incompatible virtual device there. If you don't see a compatible virtual device, you need to click on Manage Android Devices. Okay, which will bring up this window here, and it shows virtual devices you have installed and then ones that you can download. So all you would need to do is choose one of these. So maybe Nexus 4 KitKat like I have, or you might want something newer like Nexus 4 Lollipop. So you can choose different model phones running different versions of Android. Okay, and then you can just click on the download button and it should download and add a virtual device that you can use here. You might need to restart Xamarin, I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, once you've installed another virtual device, it will show up here and you can pick pick it. But I'm going to choose Nexus 5 KitKat. I've already got that installed. And now all I need to do is click on this button to build a project. And I've made a mistake somewhere. Oops, here I've said temp. Okay, so I'm not sure why I did that again, but I need to use the temp variable. So I've got the float, I've got a temperature variable here called temp, which grabs the text from the temperature text edit text field, stores it in that variable. Then to convert to Fahrenheit, we need to take that value in that variable, multiply it by 1.8 plus 32. That will give a result. I had the wrong thing there. I had temperature text edit. It should be temp. Okay, so if you made that mistake, just make sure you fix that. Then click on run or build. And it's building. It might take a minute to do this. Now it's starting up the virtual device in the Xamarin Android player. It can take a minute to start up. Okay, now I just need to unlock it, so I can drag this padlock to the right to unlock. It should automatically open the app after a few seconds. Here we go, so it's just started. So we have temperature converter. I have a text box here that I can click in, and it brings up the keypad. So I could maybe put in 20 degrees, so 20, and then that's 20 degrees Celsius. And I want to convert that to Fahrenheit, so I can click on convert to Fahrenheit, and then it gives the result there, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, I could delete that, and I can convert 68 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. So I type in 68, convert to Celsius, and then it gives the result 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that works really nicely. From here, you could change a few things. So maybe you could change the app icon. You could give a bit more information to the user, maybe some more instructions. Maybe you could change the size of the buttons or the placement of the buttons. You could also change the placement of the result and maybe make that a little bit more intuitive. So maybe you could have a text box for Celsius, a text box to Fahrenheit, and then maybe instead of using buttons, you could use some sort of other element to press or to drag a slider or maybe something like that between Celsius and Fahrenheit. And then maybe the result could be a bit more clearly explained. So maybe it could say 20 degrees Celsius is 68 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So a few improvements could be made there to the user interface, to the layout, and just the way it's presented to the user. But there we go, we have a basic Android app. Didn't take too long to make, and it works nicely. That's it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show how to make the exact same app, but we're going to make it for iOS to run on an iPhone. Thanks for watching.